The number of intelligent civilizations in the universe equals the number of habitable planets, multiplied by the probability of life emergence, multiplied by the probability of intelligence arising among life. If you stand up now and look at yourself in the mirror, from the perspective of matter, you'll see some imperfection. To understand what's being discussed, I must debunk a very popular myth about matter. Let's suppose water turns into ice when freezing, adopting a crystalline form, and since our early childhood, we genuinely believe that ice crystals, snowflakes, or patterns on frozen windows are examples of symmetry spontaneously emerging in nature. Examples of harmonious structure arising in contrast to the prevailing disorder in nature. But that's not quite the case. In reality, it's the opposite. A crystal is not an emergence but a violation of symmetry, as water is far more isotropic, meaning more symmetric in all directions, than ice. When water crystallizes, atoms in it self-organize into distinct patterns. The space occupied by a crystal, losing its symmetry, becomes periodic with an algorithm, meaning the crystal disrupts spatial uniformity, yielding repetitive patterns in specific directions. Casting your gaze across our entire universe, you'll notice the same thing. The universe is quite homogeneous. It doesn't matter where you are, here, or here. On average, you'll observe roughly the same picture, regardless of your observation point. Looking out the window at the starry sky, you'll find that the observable universe is a good example. If you were looking out of a window from the other edge of the galaxy, you'd see something similar. But if the universe is this homogeneous, then what are you doing here? Just as ice breaks water's symmetry, galaxies, stars, and planets disrupt the symmetry of the universe. However, nothing disrupts it with such impact as humans. Stanislav Lem, in his monumental work Summa Technologiae, poses the question, is our civilization ordinary or exceptional? Do we conform to the norms of development accepted in the universe, or do we represent deviation, monstrosity? We understand the process of water crystallization, we understand the emergence of various cosmic bodies. But don't be deceived, we have no clear understanding of how or why we came into existence. Think about it, transport your thoughts billions of light years in any direction from your current location and look around. The universe is, in general, the worst place imaginable for human existence. Seriously, it's utterly unsuitable for that. Does any place in the universe, beyond Earth, exist where you can teleport and not die? We might be the result of circumstances so fortunate or unfortunate that the probability of this happening is 1 in the entire universe since its inception. At least that's what paleontologist Peter Ward and astronomer Donald Brownlee assert in their book Rare Earth. In this book, they provide arguments for why complex life is an incredibly rare or even singular phenomenon, requiring exceptional astrophysical and geological coincidences. This video is largely based on this book. Honestly, how many times have you heard that Earth is an ordinary rocky planet in a typical planetary system, situated in an unremarkable region of one among countless spiral galaxies? Carl Sagan and Frank Drake love to repeat this. On par with many scientists, they believe that given all this unremarkableness of our habitat, considering the countless planets similar to Earth, the universe should be teeming with life. From this perspective, there's even a characteristic term, the mediocrity principle. But how about the opposite approach? What about the idea that our Earth is fantastically unique? What if the solar system is not a typical cosmic structure, but an unimaginable rarity? Could it be that even the galaxy we're in isn't just an ordinary case? What premises led to the emergence of the peculiar form of matter called humanity? According to the authors of Rare Earth, things are not as straightforward as one might think. Earth is not just another rock in space. And space might be as empty as it appears. The Rare Earth hypothesis carries a cold sense of melancholy, loneliness, and even meaninglessness. Advocates of the Rare Earth hypothesis claim that a planetary system capable of supporting complex life must necessarily be structured somewhat similarly to the solar system. Many are convinced that a fundamental condition for life to arise on a planet is the so-called Goldilocks zone or habitable zone. This is an area around a star within which the conditions on a planet's surface, as it orbits the star, would maintain water in a liquid state. Liquid water is a crucial requirement for life as it acts as a solvent in many biochemical reactions. The uniqueness of Earth also lies in its relatively circular orbit around our star, ensuring that we are never too far or too close to the Sun. Many believe that if rocky planets are found in space, orbiting within the habitable zone of their stars, life on these planets would almost inevitably follow. But, as you will soon understand, this is catastrophically insufficient for life. According to the authors of Rare Earth, the habitable zone around a star isn't the only habitable zone one needs to be within. Our entire solar system has been fortunate enough to be within the habitable zone of an entire galaxy. This isn't the most obvious thought. Our solar system revolves around the center of the galaxy, completing a full orbit approximately every 235 million years. Since the oceans first appeared on Earth, it has completed this journey 17 times, 15 times since the first confirmed signs of life, and about 7 times since the emergence of multicellular organisms. And this isn't just a leisurely flight, you see. The expanses of the galaxy harbor many daunting and absolutely deadly things for our tiny solar system, especially over such a vast stretch of time. However, living matter is still here. You see, a large portion of any galaxy is a dead zone, unable to sustain complex life. The closer you get to the center of the galaxy, the stronger the destructive effects of X-ray and gamma radiation become. These are generated by black holes and neutron stars, which are more abundant there than closer to the galactic center. The closer we are to the galactic center, the more frequent supernova bursts occur nearby. Another pleasant thing capable of annihilating entire worlds from distances spanning light years. There are a lot of stars in the galaxies. There are even more planets around these stars, which means that life should be in full swing throughout the Milky Way. When we talk like this, we're actually misleading ourselves. The majority of stars are concentrated closer to the center of the galaxy, and that's not surprising, considering that's where everything happens. Furthermore, the higher density of stars near the center or in the spiral arms of the galaxy brings about more significant gravitational disturbances. This means that even if a planet orbits its star at the optimal distance, this fortunate setup could be disrupted when another star flies by, or worse. Being too close to the galactic center is not favorable. However, it's also bad to be too far from the galactic center. In such cases, the metallicity of stars decreases, and metals are crucial for forming terrestrial planets. Recent research indicates that the extent of the galactic habitable zone is about 7 to 9 parsecs from the center of the galaxy. To put it simply, this zone encompasses only about 10% of the stars in the Milky Way. Other studies suggest that only 5% of stars are suitable for the emergence of life, but the most critical factor is time. A planetary system suitable for life must maintain favorable conditions steadily for billions and billions of years to allow complex life to evolve. Therefore, a life-bearing star should have an almost perfectly circular orbit around the galactic center. Additionally, its rotational speed should be synchronized with the rotation speed of the spiral arms to minimize passage through dense star clusters. Yes, our solar system is exactly within the habitable zone of the entire galaxy. The orbit of the Sun around the center of the Milky Way is almost perfectly round, with a period of about 235 million years, approximately matching the rotation period of the galaxy. Indeed, our planet is lucky to be in the habitable zone of its star system, which, in turn, is lucky to be within the habitable zone of its galaxy. But that's not all. Our entire galaxy is quite a rare case. For about 10 billion years, the Milky Way hasn't had significant interactions with other galaxies, making it unusually quiet and dim. Only around 7% of galaxies are like this. As you can see, even on such immense scales, there are many nuances to consider if we want to understand how unique our fate is. However, most of the mysteries and inconceivable coincidences lie not out there, but right here, within our solar system. When we look at stars, we imagine that these points in the night sky would appear somewhat similar to our sun if we were to get closer to them. Yes, we all know that stars can differ drastically in various aspects, like their sizes. However, it's not about that. It's about the fact that according to estimates, over 50% of stellar systems in our galaxy are at least binary. In half of these cases, approaching the stars you see would reveal something similar or even worse. For instance, one of the most famous stars, Polaris, which assists travelers in finding the north, is actually a triple star system. Binary and ternary star systems look impressive, but they are almost certainly unsuitable for life. In systems with more than one star, the stability and regularity of planetary orbits remain questionable. A very delicate configuration or specific conditions are required for even a lifeless planet to coexist stably within these titans. Once again, more than half of the stars, so to speak, are immediately ruled out, and that's just the beginning. Our Sun, by itself, is unique in many respects. Even if a star is solitary, that doesn't guarantee stability. For life to evolve, a star must be exceedingly stable. The Sun exhibits low luminosity variation, only about 0.1%, and again, it's commonly said that the Sun is an ordinary star among countless others. However, to date, not a single solar twin has been found, a star that closely matches the Sun's size, luminosity, temperature, age, and metallicity. I remind you that proper metallicity is required for forming a protoplanetary disk from which planets develop, as well as for minor changes in the star's luminosity. You might wonder if the Sun is some sort of absolute ideal. Well, there are numerous possibilities. For instance, the larger the star, the wider its habitable zone, increasing the probability of life emergence. Yes, that's if we're talking about temperature. However, the larger the star, the more powerful its ultraviolet radiation, and the faster it exhausts its fuel and transforms into a red giant. For example, one of our favorites, Betelgeuse, is about to expire in just around 10 million years. For comparison, the Sun is 500 times larger. Ignoring radiation, even simple life near supermassive stars probably won't have enough time to develop. But there are also red dwarfs. They emit weak radiation and have longer lifespans than the Sun. Much longer. A red dwarf with 10% of the Sun's mass will burn for 10 trillion years, an inconceivable amount of time. Plus, red dwarfs never become red giants. True, but red dwarfs are quite cold. Their temperature is slightly higher than that of a filament in an incandescent lamp, around 3,000 degrees Celsius. And they are very dim. Some red dwarfs emit 10,000 times less light than the Sun. Therefore, for a planet with the potential for complex life, it needs to be very close to such a star. Seems great, but two main problems arise. First, a planet that comes too close to a red dwarf will almost inevitably fall into a tidal lock, forever facing the star with one side. This is called tidal locking, just like the Moon and Earth. As a result, one side of the planet will always be scorching hot, while the other will be extremely cold. And if that weren't enough, the stellar wind, which is not much weaker in red dwarfs compared to the Sun, will leave no chances for life to develop in the terminator zone. The terminator zone is a narrow strip between light and darkness where the temperature could theoretically be comfortable. Now, let's take a look at the planets in our solar system. Do they appear normal? Could there be something unusual about them? How about their arrangement? Is this a typical configuration of planets in planetary systems throughout the universe? Here, we have 4 small rocky planets, followed immediately by the gas giants. Perhaps, this is a quite common occurrence. But hold on. In reality, we have a very peculiar planetary system. Firstly, it exhibits an extremely wide range of planet characteristics. Starting from the tiny Mercury and ending with the colossal Saturn and, dare I say, Jupiter. In most planetary systems in the universe, planets don't differ significantly from each other. The majority of space systems near stars feature super-Earths several times larger than Earth. However, in our inner solar system, we have only a few small rocky planets and none inside Mercury's orbit. Secondly, gas giants the size of Jupiter or Saturn are quite rare and only exist in around 10% of planetary systems. Moreover, these few are rarely endowed with stable, nearly circular orbits so far from their star. Yet, we have 2 of them with fairly large orbits and substantial distance from their source of light. We still don't quite understand how such a configuration of planets in the solar system came to be. Various complex computer models are generated, but consensus is still elusive. Someone might impatiently ask, what does this arrangement really offer us? Quite a lot. Unlike most super-Earths in space, Earth's size is optimal. A planet too small cannot maintain a sufficient atmospheric layer, resulting in low and erratic surface temperatures. Oceans would simply fail to form. Hold on, our neighbor Venus, despite being smaller, has an atmosphere 92 times denser than Earth's, leading to temperatures around 462 degrees Celsius. This is true, and it's possible that early Earth once had a similar atmosphere but later lost it due to a catastrophic impact that formed the Moon. This impact ultimately allowed Earth to develop an atmosphere with optimal parameters and a density that helps balance daily temperature fluctuations. The formed ozone layer effectively shields Earth's surface from ultraviolet radiation. Nitrogen and carbon dioxide are balanced for the emergence of life. Precipitation is vital for the water cycle and so on. But I digress. This kind of planet distribution, where gas giants are positioned on the outer edge of the planetary system, provides an advantage, a shield against asteroids. Take Jupiter for instance. I've always thought it's just a bit larger than Saturn, but it turns out Jupiter, this gas giant, has a mass that's more than 2.5 times that of all the other planets in the solar system combined. Likely, it's responsible for preventing a colossal hypothetical Oort cloud with trillions of comets, estimated to weigh as much as 2 Earths, from bombarding Earth. For instance, scientists suggest that objects in the Oort cloud actually formed closer to the Sun, but the gravity of Jupiter and other gas giants flung them out during the early stages of the solar system's evolution. Furthermore, if fragments from the outskirts of the solar system were to head towards its center for some reason, they'd most likely collide with one of the gas giants first. Back in 2009, an object left a dark spot the size of the Pacific Ocean in Jupiter's atmosphere. In 2021, amateur astronomers filmed the collision of an unknown object with Jupiter. And let me remind you, Jupiter follows immediately after Mars, right after the terrestrial planets. If this gas giant with strong gravity had, for instance, an insufficiently circular orbit, the solar system would probably look quite different. And, most likely, we wouldn't be here. Consider this: Jupiter's movement is so well optimized that it deliberately positions itself between two opposites. Specifically, between the second most massive planet from the end and the second most massive planet from the beginning of the solar system. It doesn't exert significant gravitational influence on either. I'll just humbly note that the aforementioned factors are not only critical collectively but also individually for the emergence of complex life on Earth. Remove any one of them, and it's quite likely that humans wouldn't have appeared. How many variables remain obscure for now? The authors of Rare Earth list only what is more or less on the surface. For example, the enormous terrestrial core. For some reason, Earth's core is larger than expected. And apparently, this is linked to our satellite, the Moon. Just look at the other rocky planets in the solar system. Mercury and Venus, for instance, have no satellites at all. Look at Mars' moons, Phobos and Deimos. They aren't even spherical, they are captured asteroids held by gravity. Phobos has a diameter of 22 kilometers, while Deimos is only 12 kilometers across. On the other hand, Earth's moon is the largest natural satellite in the solar system relative to the size of its planet. It's about 27% of Earth's size. Pluto, once considered a classical planet until 2006, has a mass smaller than the moon's, roughly 1/6 the mass. The formation of such a satellite is a puzzle itself. Lunar rock samples collected by the Apollo astronauts surprisingly resemble Earth's crust in composition. Therefore, the most plausible theory for the moon's origin that we have so far is Theia. Theia is a hypothesized ancient planet the size of Mars, which presumably collided with Earth around 4.5 billion years ago. Upon impact, Theia's core and mantle mixed with Earth's core and mantle. It's quite possible that we have two planets underfoot. Hence, the large terrestrial core. Fragments from the collision formed our moon. So what's the big deal? Well, this massive satellite causes tides. Charles Darwin speculated that the simplest life forms might have originated in one of the basins created by lunar tidal effects. These are not the tides we are familiar with. This is how the moon looked in the sky 4 billion years ago. As you can imagine, its gravitational influence was much more terrifying. Essentially, living organisms from the ocean were constantly propelled onto land and perished until someone acquired a beneficial mutation. But with the oceans on the planet, too, not everything is so simple. Data from 2019 suggests that Theia might have formed in the outer solar system, and a significant portion of Earth's water likely originated from it. So those oceans you see might not be from here. The authors of Rare Earth, Peter Ward and Donald Brown, note that a large satellite enhances plate tectonics, crucial for biodiversity and the carbon cycle. This is not to mention the fact that the moon contributes to the strong magnetic field of the Earth, which protects us from cosmic radiation. Just don't forget to count the factors in your mind, calculating the probability of one or the other. This giant impact also gave the Earth its special axial tilt and rapid rotation speed. The rapid rotation reduces daily temperature fluctuations and makes photosynthesis viable. According to the Rare Earth hypothesis, the axial tilt shouldn't be too large or too small, as a planet with extreme tilt would experience drastic seasonal climate changes. With a small or absent tilt, there would be no seasons at all. This, comically, leads to a lack of evolutionary incentives from this perspective. Earth's tilt is just right. The gravity of the large satellite also stabilizes the planet's tilt. Without this effect, the tilt's variation would be chaotic, likely rendering complex land-based life impossible. By the way, you didn't mishear. Indeed, there are seemingly paradoxical factors at play. For instance, throughout Earth's history, its temperature has drastically risen twice, causing complete ice coverage 2.2 billion and 635 million years ago. Such extreme or unified conditions spurred the development of life. The first instance stimulated the evolution of photosynthetic microorganisms, leading to a significant reduction in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and the release of oxygen. After the second glaciation, the Cambrian explosion occurred, giving rise to almost all existing branches of animal evolution that we see today. If before this, all life was simple and single-celled, then afterward, there's a sharp increase in the number of complex multicellular organisms. The first brain emerges right here. Think about it. If we were to find a planet with paradise-like conditions in space, perhaps this is exactly why we wouldn't discover complex life there. It simply wouldn't be necessary on a paradise planet. There are no complex survival-related challenges to solve. As we can see, contrast is needed for the development of complex life. In what ratio? Positive factors alone aren't enough. They must be balanced by negative ones for the stimulation of evolutionary processes. However, these negative factors shouldn't be overly negative because life is quite fragile. How many factors must converge in the right sequence? Let's start small. Suppose we have all these habitable zones within stars and galaxies. There are gas giants, protectors, a rocky planet with water, the right atmosphere, and a large moon, a near twin of Earth somewhere out there in space. And what's next? Nothing. The first tiniest building block, what we call life, is a replicator. In other words, a molecule capable of reproducing. Only with the appearance of the first replicator do directed evolutionary mechanisms begin to operate. But the very first replicator must have appeared by chance. Consider that a complex system capable of copying itself had to emerge by chance. Hence, we seek the simplest combinations from which this very first replicator could have emerged. However, the simplest combinations we observe are still very complex for blind chance. What's the probability of the first maximally simple reproducing organism appearing? So simple that by removing just one more element, it can no longer reproduce. Renowned expert in evolutionary calculations and biology, Eugene Koonin, in his book The Logic of Chance, provides an estimate of the probability of the spontaneous appearance of the first replicator. He cites the figure as 1 in 10 to the power of 1018. 1 in 10 to the power of 1018 is a 1 followed by 1018 zeros. Grasping the sheer unlikelihood of this event is impossible. Eugene Koonin himself, in one of the explanations for how this could even happen, envisions a multiverse. If there are an infinite number of universes, then the configurations of atoms would also be infinite. In such a case, the realization of a scenario involving the spontaneous appearance of a replicator is easily conceivable. But it would be very convenient to immediately attribute such things to the multiverse, cosmic will, or a deity and spare ourselves the mental strain. Therefore, Koonin reminds us that we must lower the bar to the utmost and only explain through spontaneous emergence what truly cannot be explained otherwise. The emergence of life requires extremely unlikely events, and therefore, we are alone in our universe. Not only are we intelligent beings, but more broadly, living beings in general. I don't want to exaggerate, but I'll have to. Here, our first replicator emerges and starts reproducing. A very important question arises: is complexity growth obligatory in evolution? The answer, absolutely not. You see, some of the first replicators, prokaryotes, such as bacteria and archaea, were highly inefficient in terms of energy. Due to their design, they couldn't store energy in large quantities or become more complex. A simple mutation wouldn't cut it here. This is where evolution fell short. A revolution was needed. Because of this, at the prokaryote level, development stagnated for 1 billion years, if not more. Nothing indicated the emergence of more complex life forms. Evolution might have just stopped at this stage. But then something happened. Something as unlikely as the appearance of the first replicator. Something that, as described by British biochemist Nick Lane, could only have happened once in the entire history of life. An archaeal cell engulfed a bacterium and, for some reason, didn't digest it. This bacterium, in the process, deactivated 99% of its genome, shed most of its mechanisms, and focused on energy production, ATP. This was how the first mitochondrion appeared. The mitochondrion, in a way, is the cell's power station. This symbiosis, solving the energy problem, allowed life to complexify unhindered. Thanks to this microscopic, incredible event, all the life you see around you, for the same reason, exists before your very eyes. I hope nobody's fatigued yet. Because the most crucial part lies ahead. The number of intelligent civilizations in the universe equals the number of habitable planets, multiplied by the probability of life emergence, multiplied by the probability of intelligence arising among life. Intelligence. All of the above, damn it, doesn't guarantee the emergence of intelligence. If everything before this point was merely simple or theoretical reasoning, this factor we can see with our own eyes, here and now. Humanity has described over 1.7 million species of living organisms. Naturally, that's not all. The total number of species currently existing on Earth, according to some estimates, reaches 8.7 million. Among them, how many are intelligent? In short, we hardly know what intelligence, intellect, and consciousness truly are. We only have some intuitive understanding. At one point, we concluded that the emergence of intelligence was possible. But looking at all the other life on the planet, we see that evolution doesn't particularly strive for intelligence and, moreover, the appearance of intelligence is extremely unlikely. Researcher Charles Lineweaver asserts that when considering any extreme traits in intermediate animal stages, they don't necessarily lead to inevitable results. A big brain isn't any more inevitable than long noses in animals like tube-nosed fish or elephants. Monkeys, whales, elephants, dolphins, octopuses, and squids are considered the most intelligent beings on Earth after humans. In particular, dolphins are highly intelligent, with their brains bearing similarities to human brains. However, as Lineweaver points out, dolphins have had around 20 million years to build a radio telescope and have not done so. Why? Why is humanity the sole so-called intelligent species on the planet? Aren't you surprised that evolution, so economical in its manifestations, created the human brain? A structure with such a degree of redundancy that it handles 21st century civilization problems excellently. After all, anatomically, biologically, it's the very same brain as that of our primitive, barbaric ancestor who lived 100,000 years ago. Is our civilization a common or exceptional phenomenon? Do we conform to the norms of development accepted in the universe, or are we a deviation, an ugliness? What is the probability? Every variable in the equation for calculating intelligent civilizations in the cosmos implies the presence of numerous factors, which we attempted to enumerate. So, what do we end up with? To some extent, we understand how many factors are necessary and what they must be like for a planet to become suitable for life. At the same time, we understand very little about how many factors must align for the simplest form of life to emerge on a habitable planet. And we do not understand at all in what quantity and sequence these factors are necessary for the transition from the simplest form of life to intelligence on a habitable planet. The absolute majority of factors, as I mentioned, remain unknown to us, but let's dream for a moment. Let's suppose we have a formula that guarantees a 100% presence of complex life with strict adherence to just, let's say, a mere 80 factors. Highly optimistic, but let's make it even more optimistic. Let the probability of each factor be not something like 1 in 10 to the power of 1018, but merely 1 in 2. In other words, for example, the likelihood of discovering a sun-like star is not 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1 million, but 50-50. The likelihood of discovering a rocky planet after such a star 50-50. 50-50 probability that it will be in the habitable zone, that it has a moon-like satellite, a proper atmosphere, and even the likelihood of the emergence of one replicator on it, the same 50-50. And so on and so forth until we gather all 80 necessary parameters. If everything were as it appears in the universe we observe, what would be the probability, given this scenario, of encountering intelligent counterparts? The probabilities 10 to the power of -24 or 1 in a trillion. In simple words, the probability is so exceptionally minuscule that you could search through the entire observable universe and not find a single planet resembling Earth. Not one. However, in reality, there are likely many more factors, and hardly any of them have as optimistic a probability as a coin toss. We often hear that claiming we are alone is too egocentric, but this lofty opinion is generally based on the fact that we currently lack any confirmation of extraterrestrial life, not only intelligent but life in general. The hypothesis of rare earth is supported by a number of popular scientists, yet the book by Peter Ward and Donald Brownlee, even after its release, continues to receive its share of criticism. For example, according to recent research and observations, a large moon is a rarity for a planet in the solar system, but not for planets in other star systems. Arguments about its necessity for the emergence of life raise well-founded doubts. Furthermore, based on the results of a 2008 study, Jupiter has caused more collisions with Earth than it prevented. Proximity to the star, in the end, is not the only way to achieve a comfortable temperature on a planet. So, in your view, where is there the most water in the solar system? On Earth? Not at all. Jupiter's moon, Europa, has twice as much water. But how is this possible? And the average temperature on Europa's surface is minus 171 degrees Celsius. Yet, due to tides caused by the eccentricity of Europa's orbit and the influence of other moons, beneath a layer of ice about 30 kilometers thick lies an entire ocean, which can reach depths of 80 to 180 kilometers. The existence of living organisms on Earth that can survive and reproduce in extreme environmental conditions, such as extremophiles, makes the presence of life on Europa entirely possible. This is despite the fact that Europa is well beyond the habitable zone. Moreover, if we stretch our imagination, we can envision that on Saturn's moon Titan, life might have a foundation not in water but in methane. Moreover, the likes of Carl Sagan proposed that aquatic life is also feasible on gas giants. As we have seen, the hypothesis of rare Earth predicts that the Sun rarely or perhaps never passes through the spiral arms of the galaxy. However, astrophysicist Karen Masters calculated that the Sun does, in fact, pass through large spiral arms approximately every 100 million years, and some studies even suggest that several mass extinctions correspond to previous intersections of the solar system with the galactic spiral arms. Yes, by the way, we are currently in one of them. And so on and so forth. We can doubt almost every point. However, the most crucial point is that the hypothesis of rare Earth is exceptionally anthropocentric. This hypothesis is not a recipe for creating intelligent life, it's a recipe for creating humans. The book by British astronomer David Darling, Life Everywhere, was written in response to rare Earth. He says that the hypothesis of rare Earth is not a hypothesis at all, but a fitting of facts to describe how life on Earth originated. It's not important whether there is something unusual here on Earth, there will be something special in every planet in space. What matters is whether any of the earthly circumstances are not only unusual, but also essential for a complex life. Given that we truly have no idea which parameters should be present in the equation or in what sequence. Considering that our understanding of intelligence and its possible forms is limited, what led us to believe that the earthly version is the only feasible one? Let's speak the truth, we aren't searching for all possible civilizations, primarily, we're seeking anthropomorphic ones. We introduce logic and the order of scientific experimentation into nature and, with the emergence of such a desire, yearn to recognize beings akin to ourselves. However, we don't observe such phenomena. So, do they not exist? And indeed, there is something profoundly saddening in the silence with which the stars respond to this question, a silence so complete, as if it were eternal. The hypothesis of rare Earth, if taken seriously, might indeed lead to sadness or even fear, the fear of fundamental solitude. But is solitude something we should fear? If we were to suddenly discover traces of, even the simplest life, let alone complex cells akin to eukaryotes, this news could become the most tragic in all of human history.